Welcome to the Big Success Show. Today, can a hobby make you more creative at work?
Big Success with the Professor and Mary-Lynn.
Like most of us, you face pressure to meet deadlines at work, fulfill family commitments, give back to your community, and so on, and so on, and so on. You get the idea, right, Mary-Lynn?
Thinking about it. Yeah. And with all of that going on, it's easy to forget about yourself.
So on today's show, we're going to talk about how to prevent that from happening. Hi, I'm George Kruger, a.k.a. The Professor.
And I'm Mary-Lynn. We found an interesting study by Prudential, Pulse of the American Worker Survey, Post-Pandemic Work and Life. And you'll find a link to it with your show notes with this episode.
I'm tired of just reading the title.
I know. It is pretty wordy, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
In it, workers were asked what they most valued from their job. And number one, at 68%, is job stability.
Well, that's no surprise, right? I mean, given we're in the time of the pandemic, and given that our schedules have been messed up, our job stability's messed up, so no surprise there at all.
Right, with all that chaos and everything
experienced.
So what did surprise us, though, was the number two answer. 62% of those surveyed said they value a good work-life balance.
Which really surprised us because we would job stability number one, number two, work-life balance seems like kind of a big jump, but it's certainly in line with what we've been hearing from both entrepreneurs and professionals.
Right. That the pandemic helped us all see more clearly what's most important in life. So many people are taking a step back to really look at how they are balancing the professional and personal parts of their lives. And what the two of us found is that step back can actually be a move forward.
Now that's a good way to go, isn't it?
It is.
Take a step
big
back and move forward.
And that's big with two G's.
Oh, I love it.
And that also brings us to the professor's whiteboard.
I think the whole closet was balancing on my whiteboard, Mary-Lynn. Gee, many Christmas.
Maybe we spend a little less work and you need to spend a little more life working on that closet.
Yes, I suppose that would be work-life balance, wouldn't it?
Okay, well, on the professor's whiteboard today is a big idea, and that's big with two G's. But before we share this idea, we want to preface it with one thing.
We tend to think of work-life balance as an either-or kind of thing, and it can be, but the reality is the two sides of our lives can work together. That's the big idea behind Big Success, that synergy exists in the world, and we need to look for it because it helps us reach a better overall result.
We're going to share more on this, but first, here's the professor's big idea. The creative hobby you do at home will also help make you more creative at work.
Mary-Lynn, that's so profound.
Well, it did come from the professor, after all.
Well, you did a good job.
Yes.
Well, as we've all learned, to stay creative, you need to renew your spirit. One of the best ways to do that is to take up a new hobby or rekindle an old one, something that demands your complete concentration and captures your soul.
So how do you do that? Let's discuss 3 components of a hobby that brings out your creative side. Number 1, find your flow. A professor of psychology and management at the Drucker School at Claremont University, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi.
That's easy for you to say. Can you spell it, Mary-Lynn?
Look, I said it without messing up, so I'm not going to try it again. But he wrote an excellent book called Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience, and we've got a link to this book with your show notes today.
And if you look up the author of that book, it just says he.
Yeah.
Because that's what you said. You only had to say it once,
it's the
right?
easiest thing to say.
Well, this book says that flow occurs when you have clear goals that require appropriate responses. Now, when you enter into what the book calls a flow state, you completely lose your sense of time as you enjoy the task at hand with effortless concentration. Now, we've all experienced this in something that we've done at work. But that's where your hobbies come in. You enter into a self-contained universe.
So your hobby is a great way to develop the flow, that flow state, which you can use at work also.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? And this is why we talk about synergy and big success. You can pursue something that you love on your personal time, and that very same thing helps you professionally, as you're about to hear.
All right. And so number 2 of the 3 components of a hobby that bring out your creative side is pick a hobby of winners. So Robert Root Bernstein, a professor of science, notice we're talking about an awful lot of professors today,
of course.
Professor.
They're great people.
But he is a professor of physiology at Michigan State University, and he conducted a study on the hobbies of Nobel Prize winners. And he compared them to a group of members of Sigma Xi, the Scientific Research Society.
Now, here's what he found. He found that more than half of the Nobel laureates had a long-standing hobby. So the most creative people in the world, the most innovative, over half, or almost half, more than half, I guess, had a long-standing hobby. By contrast, less than 1% of the scientific group as a whole, Sigma Xi members, less than 1% of them claim to have had a hobby. So the people who are not winning Nobel Prizes do not have hobbies. The people who are winning Nobel Prizes, the significant difference is they have a hobby.
And according to the research, 25% of the Nobel laureates were musicians. So music was their hobby. 18% painted or sketched. Writing and poetry were also common hobbies.
Yeah, so you see that creative pursuits create creative ideas. Creative pursuits create creative ideas. Kind of interesting, isn't it?
That's easy for you to say.
Yes, it is. That's a whole lot of creation. Well, and Dr. Root Bernstein has written a book with his wife, Michelle, called Sparks of Genius, the 13 Thinking Tools of the World's Most Creative People. It's a great book. We think you'll find it interesting.
Definitely. We've got a link to it in your show notes. And that brings us now to the third component of a hobby that brings out your creative side, and it's to schedule 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Now, hold on, Professor,
Yes.
with your big idea. With so many demands
I
in our
thought 5 minutes were pretty small.
Well, with so many demands, though, in our lives right
Yes.
now, how can you be saying that I need to add a hobby to my schedule?
Well, because it's so important if you want to be a Nobel laureate. But I mean, the thing is, if you want to rise to the top of your profession, and if your profession involves creativity, which almost every profession really does to some extent, then it's prudent for you to schedule time to have some sort of a hobby. And I mean, it could be to draw a picture, to doodle. Doodling would be a good way to think about it. But the best way to make time for your hobby is quite simple. And that is to schedule it, because when we schedule it, you're going to tell me you don't have 5 minutes 3 times a week.
True.
Or 1 time a week.
True.
Whatever you can do, that's the point. So you may think that you're too busy to fit that one more thing into your already too busy life, but that's the beautiful thing about the hobbies of the winners. These Nobel laureates, you can steal a moment here and a moment there. Just think 5 minutes. That's all it takes to get your flow going.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm in the flow after going over these. Let's review the 3 components of a hobby that brings out your creative side. Number 1, find your flow. Number 2, pick a hobby of winners. And number 3, schedule 5 minutes.
Now, when you find a hobby with the 3 components, you'll find that you come back to your work reinvigorated. You'll bring a fresh perspective to your challenges. So go ahead, play a tune, draw a picture, write in your journal. It's 5 minutes that will work wonders for you and lead to big success.
Got 5 minutes? Our life purpose quiz will help guide you to your passions and purpose. It's free and you'll find it at Big Success. That's big with 2G, success.com. And we hope you'll join us next time. If you're sick and tired of hearing about the ups and downs of the economy, well, what if you could build your own? We're going to talk about that on our next show.
Can't think of anything creative to say thank you, so I'll just say thank you for listening to our show today.
Until next time, here's to your big success.
Find big success at biggsuccess.com.